Into final conversation for the show today, and it's like I said, it's a bit of a difficult one to have, but a necessary one to have in terms of what is going on around the world. So BBC Africa Eye did a story and in answering some questions that had been asked previously about so some months ago, a story, or rather a clip emerged of children of African origin being asked questions or being made to make certain statements, and they had to answer in Chinese. All right, it's giving you background to this. And this was February 2 years ago, February 2020. It was a shocking one, and it circulated on Chinese social media. A group of young African children were being instructed by a voice off camera to chant phrases in Chinese. The kids repeat the words with smiles and enthusiasm, but they don't understand what they are being asked to say. Essentially, what they are being asked to say is, I am a black monster and my IQ is low. So the video ignited outrage in China and beyond, of course. Ghanaian vlogger Wode Maya made a scalding denunciation of the clip on his platform, which is one of the most popular YouTube channels in Africa. But no one has ever answered the crucial question. Why was this video made? Why was it filmed? Where was it shot? Who made it? And why has no one been held accountable for it?
And who was it being made for?
And who was it made? Who was the audience? Who was going to consume this information? So, these questions sent to the BBC Africa Eye, and BBC Africa Eye reporter Runaka Solina began a journey into a Chinese video making industry that exploits vulnerable children across the continent. She studied and worked in China for several years and experienced firsthand the pervasive racism that is directed at black people in the country. So in China, it has become popular to send personalized greeting videos via social media and messaging apps using African children. These videos range in price between $10 and $70. After analyzing hundreds of similar videos and cross-referencing them against satellite imagery from Google Earth, Runako and the BBC Africa Eye team were able to locate exactly where the low IQ clip was shot, a village in the outskirts of Lilongwe, the capital of Malawi. So there, Runako was joined by Malawian investigative journalist Henry Mhago, and together they began tracking the digital and on-ground footprints of a Chinese filmmaker they suspected of making the low IQ video, and they were assisted by Chinese journalists who, using undercover filming, recorded the man expressing a series of shockingly racist opinions about Malawians and about black people in general. And so these are things that continue to happen across the board. And in a short while, as soon as I'm given the go-ahead, we're going to be joined by Runako Solina and Henry Mhago, who will talk to us about some of these issues. Runako, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
It's really nice to have you here this morning. I mean, just giving the background to some of those things that happened before you actually took on this project and then begin to find out what happened. I'd like to really start from the beginning. So, Ndu, in the studio this morning, CT as well, having this conversation with you. And once again, thank you for joining us in the Situation Room. So here we are, Runako, and we're saying these things making the rounds is difficult. It was difficult for me to watch that documentary. It was difficult for me to read those words and to see that these things happened not so long ago when we thought that perhaps we were seeing that, maybe we're seeing the last of those. So I'd like you to tell us from the very beginning what happened and why and how you decided to take on this project.
Yeah, thank you for the amazing introduction, and also hello to Henry who's joined us. I was living in Beijing for about 6 years, going on to my 7th when the pandemic hit. And as an African, as people of African descent living in China, people, and not everyone will buy into content like this or ideas like this. But because, we're such a little speck of the population, every chance you get to give people accurate representation of who you are is absolutely crucial, right? And most people will get their narratives about Africanness, about Blackness from media, traditional media and social media. And so one of the trends that I witnessed, my personal awareness of it started in 2016, 2017, but this industry started in 2015 with these videos, videos of young children, sometimes men and women also, holding these placards and chanting these things in Chinese. And from the very beginning, there was a question mark, because even if the words that they're saying are quite innocent, sorry, there's a concern around the exploitative nature of what could be going on behind the scenes, right? And also that issue of language barriers. So early back then, I had concerns about what was going on, but no awareness and no understanding of how to investigate further. And as things happen, life goes on, other issues crop up involving race in this context, and you kind of forget almost, or your attention's elsewhere. But when in 2020 this video emerged, everyone was outraged. And when I say everyone, just to say again, I literally mean everyone. I mean, our host nation, many people were outraged. How could you do this? Stop buying these videos. Stop powering this industry. But of course, the strongest outrage and pain came from those within the African diaspora in China. And so that was really the crux, the start of this investigation for me in my head. But of course, it wasn't until BBC Africa Eye, who Henry has worked with before, kind of picked this up and took this all the way, that we were able to kind of unearth what was going on behind the scenes in this way. Yeah.
Right. So there were questions, obviously, that needed to be answered. So here we are, and we are seeing these children on this clip being told to say something that clearly they have no idea what they were saying. I mean, there was, as they said these words, it was with enthusiasm, but obviously the translation was very clear that what they were saying was self-detrimental. It was self-defacing. And then nobody was answering questions as to where this came from, for what purpose was it done, which audience was it being shot for. Obviously, folks had been buying this video. So then how did you start to begin to unearth this and to start to ask the questions then that were necessary?
So one of the problems with this industry is that barrier, right? That language barrier. And to me, and the fact that, the customer is all the way on the other end of the world. So one of the first things that it was important to do was to establish a base, or not so much a base, but a focus on Chinese social media, which was led by me, but also a focus on the ground, right? Because although the customer is on that end of the world, the actual creator of this content is in the African continent, right? So we started online. We started pouring through these videos. I have had to unfortunately consume hundreds, possibly even thousands of videos within this industry, trying to identify where this video has taken place, right? And you see in the film several breakthroughs that kind of allowed us to hone in on a specific area. We also did kind of base some of these findings on the work and insights of journalists who had tried to kind of explore this topic before, but never got to the bottom of it. And also one blogger in particular who's of Malawian heritage, who had been speaking about this and was in China at the time, who'd been speaking about this from the beginning. So all fingers pointed or started pointing towards Malawi, but to hone in on the exact village, we needed to kind of go further, and using open source techniques, which is a way online that you can kind of pair what you're seeing in a picture to kind of maps available online via Google, et cetera, we were eventually able to hone in. And at that point, the baton is passed on to Henry, who just achieved some fantastic things on the ground, being able to head to that village and speak to local people about what was going on. So it was a double-pronged approach.
Right. So, I mean, I think Henry joins us as well. Henry Mhago, thank you also for joining us in this conversation this morning. And so, really interested at this point to find out exactly then how you were able to trace what was going on, then working with Runako. Maybe we would really love to hear from you as well, what you did and how then you were able to find that it was children in Lilongwe, just outside Lilongwe, then who were involved in this. Henry, are you with us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Henry.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Let me say thank you so much. Let me start by thanking you for giving us an opportunity to speak on SpiceFM, and we really don't take it for granted. And coming direct to our question, after Runako had told me about the story, she sent me the coordinates about the area where this man was exactly doing the videos.
Right.
So I had to follow the coordinates until I got the village, and I managed to establish friendship with one of the young men staying there in the village, and this man was able to tell me the whole background of this Chinese man, how he got himself in the village, how he managed to win the people's confidence, how he was behaving in the village. He was more like he was more like a small god. And from there, then I started reporting to my colleague, Runako, about what I was finding there.
Right.
And I also had an opportunity to watch the performances. When he was filming the video, I could watch how the children
We've lost him, haven't we?
Yeah, I think we have a glitch there, trying to make that connection. We'll come back to you on that, Henry, once we're able to reestablish that connection. But then if we can continue with you then, Runako, and saying like, look, there's quite a lot of work that obviously Henry did here to try and get to. But I think one of the overriding questions here is to say, why was this being done? Why was this gentleman then out here in this little village, in this small village, talking to these children, trying to extract this information? For what purposes would this have been done?
So, I mean, yeah, to kind of go back to what we see play out in the film, he denies all of the allegations that we put to him, some related to why he was there. He denies making money from this content. But what is really interesting is that between Henry's work of speaking to people locally about their impressions of why he was in this village, the narrative is very different from his own, right? So we see that locally, there's an idea that he has come as part of a charitable organization. He's come to help people.
This is what he says. Yeah.
Well, according to, we did speak to, I mean, we had lots of interviews and some of them didn't make it into the film. But there was a narrative emerging from those people locally that we spoke to, including the chiefs, that these videos, you know, were part of this charitable operation. And some had expressed that he'd communicated that to him, but of course he denies these allegations. So that was a really interesting thing. What he said in person was that he is here to transmit Chinese culture, to teach Chinese language, to teach them Chinese dance. This was why he wanted to be there, and he just simply enjoyed being around these children. He denied making money from this industry, from filming this. But what I found really interesting is that, you know, I had been following him on a platform called WeChat, which is very similar to WhatsApp, but it's a super app that is used across China and more widely as well. And on there, you know, he speaks quite on an account that we believe belongs to him. We see transactions being made, you know, videos being sold. And of course, our undercover operative was able to have this dialogue with him about commissioning videos, right?
Yes.
And in that conversation, he's quite candid about how much he was able to earn. So his narrative differs to some of the findings that we had kind of come across and unearthed.
Yeah.
And he denied all of our allegations, basically. But yeah,
I think we've got Henry back, and I think very important then to establish from you, Henry, when you then were able to go to this village and then find some of these children who were the subjects in this video, what did they tell you about the reason why this gentleman was there asking to film them? What did they understand to be happening?
Okay, so the children told me that the gentleman was there to teach Chinese, and there were some parents who, after noting that I think the children were not learning Chinese at all, and they were not even benefiting from these so-called Chinese lessons, they decided to withdraw their children from this man. But there were a number of children. I should say but many of the children, of course, were still doing the videos because he was enticing them with some money. And now, if you have been watching the video, you'll find that the man was in a rural area, in a remote area where people are living below poverty level. People are surviving on less than $50 or maybe $1 a day. And he seemed to have taken advantage of the poverty status of the people to easily win their confidence by giving them small amount of money. So some parents could not be able to withdraw their children from this man because of the monetary benefits that he was paying them. In fact, when I interacted with the children, they told me that so they were starting filming the videos from as early as 7 a.m. and finish at around 5 p.m. But by the end of it, they were getting less than $1, which is a small amount of money as compared to the work they were doing.
Right.
The children also told me that they were not going to school because because they were with this man from 7 a.m. to noon, and she was coming on daily basis, even during school days. So some of these children could rather go to the Chinese man to do the videos than going to school, because they felt like when they're coming here, they would get less than $50, less than $50. Well, if they go to school, they will get nothing. And so that was basically the situation.
Okay.
And something that I also learned from the village was that the parents of the children, those who were still doing the videos, I think they seem to be supporting the Chinese man. As I'm saying that they had been benefiting from the small amount of money that he was giving to their children. But a big community of people who had withdrawn their children from this man. Well, I mean, we are not happy with this with this person, and they had even tried their level best to report him to a number of authorities, and it was unfortunate to hear that some authorities had been coming to the village after getting reports from the community members.
Authorities, but, as in Malawian authorities coming into the village?
Yeah, sure. Sure. Like, for instance, we are told that we are told by the village chiefs and villagers that some police officers from the area were coming to the village to quiz the man after they got after they got a complaint from the community members. But still more, the man continued to do his operatives, and the village chiefs had tried to report to different authorities, Malawian authorities at the local level, but still more, nothing could happen.
For such a thing to happen,
yes,
he must have had some contacts within the area or within Malawi, because I'm trying to envision somebody coming all the way from his country, coming to a foreign country and suddenly being able to get the sort of leeway that he had. Did you find who his contacts were? Did you find who his enablers were within the system and within the village setting?
So this is another thing that we were really interested to find out more about, how he got himself into the village, or how he got himself in Malawi, and
Okay, I think again we've got to reestablish connection with you, Henry. Good point to take a break on. Conversation continues this morning, having a bit of a worrisome conversation in this last hour of Kenya's biggest conversation, and we are having a talk with Runako Selina and Henry Mhago about a worrying video that made the rounds 2 years ago, and they've gone over the last 2 years to find out exactly what had happened and who was then responsible for this. We've done the background with both of you and looked, basically at what happened. Even as we watched that documentary, Selina, Runako, even as we watched the documentary and heard the things that were said, we didn't really get to see what happened to this fella who at some point said, I was doing this for charity, I was teaching Chinese. And then later on, of course, through the undercover reporter, then said something else. But we didn't get to know what happened with him. Mhago told us already that, there were Malawian authorities who came in every now and then and asked questions. And we saw a little bit to that effect during the documentary as well. But then what happened to him?
Yeah, so unfortunately, within our remit, kind of as journalists, it's, you might wish otherwise that you could do more. Unfortunately, our job is to unearth what is happening, and then hope that things are taken on. Henry can perhaps say more about this, but we have seen ministers speak out about what is happening and what our investigation has unearthed, and saying that further investigation will take place. Accountability will be sought, which is always what we kind of hope will happen as a result. But again, it's not within our remit to do. We have also spoken to, and again, Henry had many of these conversations himself, so could tell more. Police spokespeople who have also kind of expressed these sentiments also. So there is a desire within the country to kind of get justice for what has been happening. Yeah.
So Henry, was there, at some point it was evident to even the parents that this man did not have good intentions with these children, or rather with the end result of what he was filming. Parents of these children later on found out. What was the reaction from what you could see? What was the reaction of parents when they realized, okay, hold on, first of all, even if there was compensation, it was very little. Number two, what our children are being asked to say was something totally different from what we thought. What was the reaction before we then get to what possible, consequences met this man?
Okay, so the parents' reaction was very negative. They were shocked because they didn't expect him to come to their village and use them for the videos and for the videos that made him a lot of money, and they even didn't expect him to name, I mean, to call black people like black devil. They felt like this is uh, a big, I mean, a big shame.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a, it's something like the people feel like that it's something that the parents are feeling like maybe they were being used by this person for his own benefit, and they are also having an impression that the image that this Chinese man has portrayed out.
We lost him again.
Yes, I think we have. Okay, so to re-establish that connection with Mihago, we understand that, technology can sometimes, do that thing to you. But still, as we continue with this, with you, Runako, this is one area. I mean, because we're talking about a small village on the outskirts of Lilongwe, that the tracing has been done from China back here. So then the eyebrow raising question is, how many more places is this happening, and how many more messages of this terrible nature are being sent out even to date?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, contextualizing this industry, it's existed since 2015, 7 years now. So you can imagine over that time just how much content is made. I mean, Susu Lu Ke, he tells us himself his record of how many videos he was able to make in just one day. So 5 years, I mean, I can't give a solid figure on how many videos have been made, of course.
And not just in Malawi either.
Not just in Malawi, yeah, exactly. That's the thing that needs to be kind of, if you notice it early on in the film, it's very quick. And obviously our film focuses on one village as an example, as a microcosm, if you like, of this wider industry and the harm that could potentially be happening. We haven't investigated, so that's why I'm saying potentially. But, we have seen videos filmed elsewhere across the continent. I think the map that we show in the film highlights 7 different countries. Retrospectively, since then, I found another country that videos have been filmed in. And, it raises questions. I think within the documentary, obviously, we focus on the key areas of wrongdoing, the racism of the individual behind some of this content. But more generally, we have to kind of interrogate this idea of sticking a camera in the faces of Africans or Black Africans, because it's their Blackness really, which, is so foreign, and saying, here's some coins, dance for your dinner, basically, right? This idea is deeply problematic. And so really, we need to think about these other operations now. And I do hope that conversation is sparked by this film. Yeah, because as you said, there are others.
What I'm interested in is what sort of people, if you buy such videos, because you clearly mentioned how it is, generally speaking, a very large population in China were aghast. I mean, they were mortified by what they saw. But then clearly there's a clientele. What sort of individuals are these?
This is one of the dynamics that I find so fascinating about this whole industry. Following Susu on social media and seeing his interactions with his core fan base, if you like, or the people that follow him on social media, a narrative is kind of spun by him. And it's one of national pride, It's one of, I am representing our country well outside in the world, and we are kind of helping people locally, so you will often see you see the segment of the film where he's giving on camera food items to children, right? These videos, there are scores of these videos posted on his accounts back to back, and so people who have no other way of verifying what is happening on the ground start to believe this is our compatriot. He is in the ground in an African country who, according to his own content, seems to be impoverished. and he's helping people in our name. You know, you've seen the videos in the film of the flag waving
Yes.
and the patriotic songs. So to a much, I don't want to call people who are buying this content, because we've already said the content itself is problematic, even outside of the racism. I don't want to call them victims, but they are being kind of misled in a way.
In terms of
I
what they're
think
buying.
many people don't know the real. Exactly.
So the
exactly. You know, they don't.
At the point of purchase, Runako, what you're saying is that folks who are buying these videos really don't know what it is they're buying until they've purchased and then actually get an opportunity to view it.
Exactly. Absolutely. And you know, there's a really good Twitter thread that was done by a journalist called Alexandria, and she speaks about technology and the role that technology plays in this. You know, transactions are done via social media, via apps like WeChat. You just send a message to someone and you can order these videos. And so it places a distance. You know, it's so far removed from the reality on the ground that you as a customer don't really have to question what's going on. You just say, oh, my birthday's coming up, or someone else's birthday's coming up. Let me put in this order, send it off, and you know, that's it. So yeah, that's the nature of this business and the kind of customer who's buying these videos.
We'll come back to you with an important question, but then just to you, Henry, would you say that after this incident, because I mean, obviously, believe that our job as journalists is to you tell the story, but then the hope is that thereafter there is a lesson that then either can be learned or there's an issue that can be continuously highlighted when these things happen. So after this broke, obviously, that this fella didn't mean well with what he did. Do you think that there was a heightened level of awareness in these communities or in these areas that not everybody who's wielding a camera in the name of helping is actually helping? Was it clear now to people that, you know, we need to be a little bit more careful? I don't know if we can get Henry on that one. I think our connection with Henry is still...
He's muted. Henry, you're muted.
Oh, Henry has muted his microphone.
Sorry.
Voila. All right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can
Yes,
hear you.
we can.
Okay.
I don't know if you got all the points of that question.
Yeah, sure. Yes. So what I can say is that, as I said earlier, that the man was operating in a remote area where people are living below the poverty level. Most of the people are living in grass-thatched houses. I think this will also tell you that in terms of awareness campaigns, I think there is little that is being done or completely nothing. But after our investigation, like yesterday, when I had an interview with the Minister of Homeland Security, is when she was saying that government is currently working on a sensitization campaign for people in the community and the other places in the area that I think they really need to be aware of these foreign nationals when they're coming in their villages. So in terms of awareness campaigns, I should say, we expect that now is when people will start being sensitized about these foreign nationals who are coming to exploit them after the broadcast of our investigation. I have also heard some non-government organizations also planning to start conducting massive civic education in the areas where these Chinese men were operating. So we just hope that maybe the situation, in terms of civic education, maybe the situation will improve following the action that different stakeholders are trying to put in place to at least prevent there would be instances of this nature.
Runako, would you see this as then maybe a double-edged sword in this case, that what it does then to our psyche is that then it makes everybody be very wary of anybody who then comes into any community with a camera, even if they did have good intentions, then now what you do is that you look at them sideways. Is it possible that we might then be losing out on something that could actually be well-intentioned?
You know, the way that I kind of view it is this. I think that anyone who comes knocking on the door of local communities should be questioned. I think if their intentions are genuine, they should be able to prove it, you know, and evidence that what they're doing is going to be beneficial to local people in every way. And I think that decision should rest squarely on the shoulders of said local people, you know. I think, and I want to make this clear as well, I don't think we should be looking for a particular target when it comes to who could be doing wrongdoing in any rural area or any village, you know. That way we will miss potential wrongdoing elsewhere, you know. So me, as an outsider, as someone who's of African descent and deeply Pan-African, I'm still an outsider if I'm not local. If I wasn't born in X village, I should be questioned too if I was to show up. I wouldn't, by the way, disclaimer.
Yeah.
But if I was to show up with a camera and wherever else, I should be questioned too. Absolutely. It's there's an idea of, and there's a power dynamic at play that has been allowed, you know, to continue for too long. And it's one of saviorism, of this idea of being able to swan in with a camera phone and thinking, I'm going to fix these people's problems.
Sure.
You know, and I think it should be interrogated more wherever it comes from. Yeah.
You know, it's been said that the slave trade would not have been possible if locals did not participate in it. So I'm a dog with a bone on this one. I'm still going back to the enablers because, again, China is really far from Africa. Okay, so someone comes all the way from China, goes to Malawi. I mean, it's not really, it's not around the corner. And suddenly they're able to leave because I'm sure they didn't come walking. They must have gone to an airport. You're allowed into a country of a visa. Now, how does something of this sort go on for the length of time that it did? And yet, when we now hear from Henry about government action, it seems slow-paced. They're investigating, they're going to do this. Right, I understand government processes and all that. Yes, I do. But how did such an individual, and he's not the only one, how do such individuals manage to get to the point where whatever they're doing is proliferated far and wide, and that is where we are now able to figure out that this is going on, and yet it had been going on long before that. Who are the enablers?
Yeah, I mean, it's within the scope of this investigation, you know, the only person that we have held or attempted to kind of put these allegations to, you know, is Susu, is Luko, is the man behind this camera. I think there is definitely a wider conversation that needs to happen about, you know, everything that we've spoken about so far and what you've said. We didn't find any evidence directly or kind of pursue any lines of involvement locally. I think the only thing that I would say is that we had spoken in the village that we visited that Susu was in prior to Njewa, prior to the one just outside Lilongwe. We did speak to someone who was quite young and who was asked to help in the operation. So this person would help clean off the whiteboards, the blackboards, for example, and was from the village locally. But again, you know, the thing is, this barrier of communication makes it so that even if you are involved in this process, you do not have full awareness of what you're involved in. And there are things that we could say are questionable anyway, right? The treatment of the kids, the allegations of the treatment of the kids, the industry itself, you know, the fact that the kids are made to stand up in the sun and film these videos time after time after time. But the most serious allegations that we explore in this film, what is being said, you know, the fact that this is a business, we have no indication that people locally are aware of that. So even people who are helping or are saying, yes, you can be here, you know, those very serious allegations, we have no evidence that they were aware of them.
Well, we can't but thank the both of you for, you know, taking your time over 2 years to really figure out what was going on here and shed some light on that, because, I mean, then it was an expose that we all needed to look to see and then enable us to be really wary of what could be happening when we thought it was something of the past. So, I mean, Runako, Selina and Henry Mhago, BBCI reporters, investigators, thank you for working on this, and thank you for sharing this information with us this morning. Asante Sana.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's difficult conversations to have, but extremely necessary ones to have when we look at things like this.